to tell their own government what they're doing and let the Foreign Office know, let the embassy know what you're doing. And there were a couple of other meetings as well, one in New York, one in London. And also it's reported a visit to the Golan Heights, which Israel occupies and which Britain does not recognise. And not only that, but at first she said, oh yeah, everybody knew about it. And then she had to say, actually, that wasn't quite true.
It sounds basic to tell the Prime Minister to get officials with you when you have meetings at that level. Yet it hasn't happened. Why?
Incredibly naive, or that she was trying to create her own foreign policy. I mean, another sort of analogy, metaphor that's been used by political reporters, that it's a sign of Theresa May's weakness, that she is, as one person put it, a teacher who'd lost control of the classroom, leaving all the pupils, in this case the ministers, to sort of go off and do what they want.
Yeah, and that's the thing, really. It's not just a Priti Patel story or that particular minister. It's actually reflective on Theresa May's government, because it's not just her. We've had Michael Fallon in the news having to step down because of accusations of harassment. Boris Johnson calls for Boris Johnson, the Foreign Secretary, to step down after a blunder of comments that he made about the British journalist in Iran. So it seems pretty chaotic.
Yes, I'm tempted to quote, of course, from Oscar Wilde, the great writer: to lose one parent may be regarded as a misfortune, to lose both looks like carelessness. You could almost say the same thing about ministers. I mean, of course, no one is blaming Theresa May for what Priti Patel has done or what the former Defence Secretary is alleged to have done, but of course it just adds to this whiff of chaos and crisis around the government, as you've been hearing and reflecting in those newspaper headlines, and it all comes amidst a real clear sense of just how divided this government is over the biggest challenge that it faces, far bigger than the resignation of two ministers.
Exactly.
And that, of course, is how to carry out Brexit.
Rob, many thanks. Our UK Affairs correspondent Rob Watson there. You're listening to Newsday on the BBC World Service. Shaima Khalil here in London. Nomia Iqbal on the Bangladesh-Myanmar border. More stories to come from Nomia and her guests and those she's been speaking to. A reminder of our top headline: the U.S. and Chinese presidents have pledged to improve trade relations after talks in Beijing, at which deals worth billions of dollars were signed. President Trump said they both believed a solution over North Korea was possible. More on those business deals in our business news. But first, Kirsten Webster is here. Yeah. She's on my left, not on my right today.
Yes, this is where I should be. We'll move Lawrence aside now. We've got 7 days of World Cup qualifying playoffs ahead of us, and tonight Croatia will look to use the first leg home advantage over Greece. Croatia are on course to qualify automatically, you remember, with 3 games remaining, but then they had that surprise defeat to Turkey and a draw with Finland, which allowed Iceland to nip ahead. Now, Northern Ireland have a tough task, so they are looking to upset Switzerland in their European playoff 2-leg tie and reach the World Cup finals for the first time since 1986. South Africa's goalkeeper, Itumeleng Khune, has asked for a mask to be prepared to protect his fractured face to give him a shot of playing in the first leg of their crucial tie against Senegal. Now, Khune trained yesterday, 2 days after he was told by doctors that he would need 2 months off to recover. Lewis Hamilton says he will not let the controversy over his tax affairs distract him as he heads into the final 2 races of the Formula One season. And Samoan Rugby Union has been declared bankrupt by the country's Prime Minister, and he's asked the public to donate money to keep the sport alive.
Kirsten, many thanks. Now, in the last few hours, the U.S. and China have announced $250 billion in business deals, all relating to President Donald Trump's visit to Beijing to see President Xi Jinping. But is it all real? Philip is here on the business desk. So, Phil, what has been announced?
Well, let's start out with that. The answer is that they've got these $250 billion in business deals. We haven't had time yet to get fully through the details of exactly what's in there, but representatives from around 20 companies accompanied President Trump, who arrived in Beijing, of course, on Wednesday. He sat down for formal talks with Xi Jinping today and late yesterday. Among the chief executives who've taken part in the visit are Kevin McAllister of Boeing Commercial Airplanes, Steve Mollenkopf of Qualcomm, so that's a telecommunications company, Keith Mayer of the Alaska Gas Line Development Corporation, that's an energy firm. A lot of the companies that have gone out there are in the energy nature of the business. Now, we know that Trump has long complained about China engaging in unfair trade practices, and he's pledged to close the trade deficit with China, which happens to be the US's largest. So this is very important for them to try and sort everything out with regards to the US trade balance. It would appear that one of the biggest deals that they want to do is to negotiate a multi-billion-dollar energy investment from the Chinese oil and gas company, China Petroleum and Chemical Corporation, which is also known as Sinopec.
So, huge deals, huge amounts of money. How much of this is quote-unquote real?
Therein lies the rub. There are two ways of answering this, as is often the case with the business news. The first is all of it. It's all been announced. It's been announced by the presidents of the world's two biggest economies. We could argue about which president has the bigger economy, but let's not get into that bathroom stall dispute. The second answer is that it's a little bit more complicated. It's not entirely clear at the moment, and we need to be quite careful with how we frame this figure. It's unclear how much of this is what's called non-binding memoranda of understanding. This is where you and I, before we've signed a contract, so we're legally obliged to one another, you might say to me, well, I quite fancy your sofa, Philip. Would you sell it to me for 500 quid? And I'll go, yeah, sure. But we haven't done a contract yet.
Yeah.
And so it's merely a memoranda of understanding between the two.
Now, this is the business side, but they've also been talking about North Korea.
There is North Korea. Now, North Korea is on the politics side of things, but it's also on the business side of things, because it could make an awful mess of Seoul, which is a very big business community, and, of course, it could adversely and is adversely impacting the relationships between some of the world's largest trading partners, China, Russia, the United States, South Korea. So there has actually been a comment come through from President Trump. He said that he's discussed North Korea with his Chinese counterpart. Both men believe a solution is possible. They have also insisted that both countries should act quickly with regards to the North Korean issue. I did have a little clip from Mr. Trump. We don't have time to play it, but in it he said that he also wants Russia to help. And Russia has been steadfastly sitting on the sidelines.
Phil, many thanks. More from fellow Hampshire and business news, and maybe we'll have time to play you that clip from Donald Trump, more on his visit to China. Let's go back to... Let me remind us where you are.
Morning, Shaima. I'm in Kutupalong. It's one of Bangladesh's largest refugee camps for Rohingya people. It's a registered camp. It's an established government camp, and it's somewhere where Rohingyas have been seeking refuge since for decades. Some camps that have cropped up. There are about 12 in the area. More than 500,000 people have fled northern Rakhine since August, crossing into Bangladesh after what's been described as a scorched earth operation by Myanmar security forces, as well as local Buddhist vigilantes. Now, these camps are designed to offer safety.